Welcome to Mysterious Goings On. We're going to get right to the show after these messages. Well, friends, this is certainly a first here on Mysterious Goings On. We had a guest scheduled. He was a science fiction author, a new book called Krill, K-R-I-L. There'll be a link in the show notes. Michael Jeffords. And I was very excited to speak with him. Kirkus Review said that Krill was an inventive and enjoyable sci-fi epic that offers a cosmic indictment of war. Well, it's not going to happen, folks. And sadly, unexpectedly, Michael Jeffords passed away. I learned that from his publicist. We were very excited, as I said, to have him coming on in the next season or this season of Mysterious Goings On. And it's a tough one for his family. I know he's got children, and it's a really rough thing when you lose a parent, especially unexpectedly, like I believe this was. He definitely had a lot of good reviews on Amazon for his work. He was a very interesting man by all accounts. I was looking forward to learning more about him. He's a Vietnam combat veteran. He'd been active in the VA since 1966. He was interviewed by Fox News TV as an advocate for veterans. He was married for 42 years before becoming a widower. He worked several decades in the financial industry. As I said, he has two sons, a daughter-in-law, and a lovely granddaughter. And he really enjoyed telling stories throughout his life and had a knack for making readers feel and think. Michael Jeffords, very sorry that we could not have met you. And we send our sincere condolences to his fans, his friends, and of course, to his children.
Hi, this is Punya Ngene, author of The Bodies That Move, and you're listening to Mysterious Goings On.
Hey, we're wrapping up, my gosh, season 7 here at Mysterious Goings On, and I thought I would do some more talking than usual, but instead of me sitting here riffing, I'm actually taking part in an interview that was covered on the Feelings Matter podcast about suspense. It's done by the Mindful Appy team, and I just love them. It's my friend Michelle Stinson Ross, who you have heard on Mysterious Goings On before, and Tina Schweiger, Mindful Appy's founder. And their show, Feelings Matter, unpacks a new angle on emotions, and they draw on the science of the human brain and delve into the psychology of human nature. Pretty new show. I think I was their first interviewee, or one of their first, and I was honored to do so. And I had a very frank, open discussion with them about the role of suspense and emotion when it comes to fiction, when it comes to writing fiction. And even if you think you know everything you need to or want to know about me and how I approach writing, my background, the John Pilot mysteries, this might be one you need to hear if you're a fan, or if you think that maybe you haven't heard it all, because there's some stuff I've never said anywhere else on this one. I'm very proud of the interview. I think Michelle did a great job with me here. I think you're going to enjoy it. You'll learn a little bit more about how writers approach emotion, particularly suspense, why suspense is important. And I think you'll also find out a few little bits and pieces about me and what draws me to writing and all that. So instead of me sitting here telling you what is going to be said, I'm going to leave it to you to listen in. Again, this is my appearance from a couple of months ago on the Feelings Matter podcast. There'll be links in the show notes if you would like to go subscribe to it. I think you should. I think they're fantastic. And we just scratched the surface here on all the great things they're talking about on that show when it comes to things like human emotion in the workplace in particular. They're great folks. Michelle does a masterful job as usual. Tina chimes in, and it's really great. So again, this is my appearance on the Feelings Matter podcast. I'll run both parts of it. It was a 2-episode deal. They split it in two because they do a shorter show than mine. And I've got them both here for you. And this will be our season finale, season 7 finale episode. Of course, go to mgopod.com for more information about when we're going to be back. And I'm really thrilled with what a great year we had here at season 7. It's just barreling ahead like a runaway train in a good way. And tell you this, though, we've got a very special guest to kick off season 8. You'll just have to stick around for that. Make sure you subscribe, Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your pods, and you'll never miss an episode, including when we start again season 8, which will be in July. Taking a little bit of a break, a little recording break, and a little bit to do some work and finish my novel and some other stuff. But make sure you do subscribe. And of course, I'd appreciate if you'd rate the show on Apple in particular. Starred review is always appreciated. Tell a friend, share it on social media. All the usual stuff I annoy you about doing for us. It'd be really great. And of course, again, this is the season finale for season 7. So we'll take a few weeks off, but just keep an eye on things. Subscribe. Check my social media. There's links in the show notes. But ultimately, just subscribe or go to mgopod.com and get on the email list, and you'll know as soon as the new episodes drop. All right, without further ado, we're going to find out why feelings matter when it comes to writing fiction, particularly when it comes to keeping you in suspense.
Do you have trouble talking about your feelings? You're not alone. It's a topic that can make even the most powerful people somewhat squeamish. You're listening to Feelings Matter, where our mission is to demystify everything about emotions so that we can all get more comfortable talking about them. Join Tina and Michelle every week as we unpack a new angle on emotions, drawing upon the science of the brain and the psychology of human nature.
Hello, and welcome to Feelings Matter, brought to you by Mindful Appy. I'm Michelle Stinson Ross. Tina's not feeling well, otherwise she would have joined us today. But luckily, we do have a special guest. Mr. J. Alexander Greenwood joins us because Alex is an author, a communicator, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to Alex today in the greater context of Feelings Matter is the fact that the character that he's created over the series of, how many books is it now? Is it 8 or 7?
It'll be 8 by Halloween. Yeah.
8 by Halloween. His lead character, John Pilot, actually has some mental health issues and also an imaginary friend. Alex, do you want to kind of explain this to us?
It's John Pilot is kind of an everyman. And let me just back up, if I could, Michelle, back up just to the genesis of the first book. And then I promise you I will not go through book by book by book. That's a lot. But the first book, just to clue everybody in, Pilot's Cross was going to be a one-off novel. I worked briefly, almost 3 years at a small Midwestern college, and really tiny, like 1,000 students in Nebraska. And I was public relations and marketing director. And one day, like about a month after I started, I come into my office and there's this big fat manila envelope just stuffed with photographs and testimonies and typewritten stuff, and it looked pretty old, most of it. Well, in the 1950s, early 50s, this school had been the center of one of the first, has a dubious distinction of being one of the first school shootings on campus. And a professor who was denied tenure walked in and he assassinated the dean and the president of the college. And then he went home and he took his own life. It was just all this information. It was like packaged up for me if I wanted to write a book about it. And I thought at first, well, maybe I'd write a nonfiction book about it and talk about it. And then I thought, no, I don't know if I want to do that. But I would love, because I've had all these experiences of being kind of a city guy going to a small town. I'm having all these experiences. So maybe I'm a little bit like this character I created, John Pilot. So anyway, I created, using that information as kind of an inspiration and a backstop, I created this guy who's coming to this small town, which is what I did, and he walks into this mystery thriller situation. Mm-hmm. The quirky part, as you alluded to, Michelle, is that, and the readers just did not know what to do with this, but he keeps hearing this voice in his head who he calls Simon, who is constantly picking on him, constantly telling him, "You're not good enough. You're an idiot. Why did you do that? You're going to get everybody killed. You're not going to solve this mystery. What is your?" And he's very caustic and very sharp with John.
Mm-hmm.
So Simon is in there, and it's interesting in that that after that first book, and I went ahead and carried on to a second, and as you know, going to be 8 soon. Simon's still with John in varying ways, but that first book or two, he's vicious. And a lot of people said, okay, is he a ghost? Is he some kind of weird doppelganger? And, I'll spoil this a little bit. No, we start to find out that Simon is actually a manifestation of anxiety. John Pilot has a low-grade depression and serious anxiety issues. And if you read the series, you bit by bit start to learn where that comes from. So it's quirky. It's fun at times because sometimes it's this Abbott and Costello thing between Pilot and this voice, this inner voice. And I'll stop rattling on just one moment, Michelle. I think we all have an inner voice, but the situation with John Pilot and with a lot of people, I think, is that voice is controlling Pilot to a large degree in his actions, or making him doubt himself so much that he could literally get killed. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, I can certainly appreciate as someone who personally deals with both depression and anxiety issues, that sense of the tape playing in your head, the story that you're telling yourself is something that is negative, that you're constantly like, this can't possibly work, which is really odd because I personally am geared toward being an optimist. So when that nasty voice starts rising, there's really something wrong with me. Yeah. And I really appreciated in reading this. So I've been reading the John Pilot mysteries ever since Alex started putting them out. I was one of the early readers for Pilot's Cross. I have been watching as each subsequent book has come out, and I've really enjoyed following the series and following John's progression as he learns to deal with the issue, how he begins to find strategies and tactics to, make his life more manageable, I guess I could. And I'm assuming that maybe some of that is also part of your personal arc.
I want to make it clear too that this representation is not done to make sport of people who have mental issues. This is actually done in a way for me to work out a lot of my own personal demons. I am proud of the fact that, and you'll see this almost right away at the end of the first book and into the series, Pilot gets help. Okay. John Pilot does not suffer, and it's not this romanticized version of mental illness where he's just this tortured Lord Byron or whoever, Shelley, sorry, not Lord Byron, Shelley, this Lord Shelley kind of thing where, just a rending of garments. And I didn't want this character in this series to become some kind of thing that I think, frankly, is way overdone in today's media anyway, kind of a sick exploitation of people with mental illness to try to be dramatically interesting. So back to your question, and we can talk a little more about that if you want, but back to your question. Yeah, I have made no secret of it. I did for a long time, but I have had low-grade depression off and on in my life. I actually had a couple of serious bouts when I was younger. Didn't want to get help, didn't think I needed help, but I absolutely did need help. And through the urging of family and friends, I got some help, got some medications that helped pull me out of it. I can tell you, I'm in my 50s now. This was in my 20s. I've had a therapist. I've had people who monitor me, and I'm actually depression free, basically. In fact, my situation is really more anchored to anxiety. And without going too deep into it, but I've had a diagnosis where anxiety is a major issue with me. And anxiety like that, you hear about people with post-traumatic stress disorder. And a lot of people have the mistaken impression, oh, well, I couldn't have that. I'm not a fireman. I'm not a police officer. I'm not a soldier. Why would I have that? Anybody can have it. If you have been in a situation that runs you through the ringer emotionally, you can develop a form of post-traumatic stress disorder. I want to stipulate, I am not a mental health professional. I'm just someone who's dealt with this most of my life. There's people who have been in bad marriages, male and female, spousal abuse, child abuse. There's things like that. There can be just a situation. I know of somebody who had a very bad, she was hit by a car and developed symptoms of post-traumatic stress about being around cars. It's a normal human response. The issue for me, I think, is just that the body has that fight or flight response, and it kicks in at the wrong times because your body is just, because of the disorder, your body is freaking out. Like you could be in a business meeting and you feel threatened, and then your heart starts beating, you feel sweaty, like you're going to be sick, or you think you're having a heart attack or whatever. And so that's what John Pilot is experiencing a lot. And through the progression of the arc of the series, you go from him at first, he gets help, but the help is typically what you see a lot of the time with this is they threw pills at him. He went to a doctor. He gave him some, I think in the book, some Prozac. It helped. And he thought, I'm cured, I'm good. But as you go forward, you see it's not just medication. Particularly with anxiety issues, you're going to need some treatment. You're going to need some therapy to help you with it. And that's what I did.
Support for this podcast comes from Mindful Appy. Your feelings matter, and Mindful Appy can prove it. Try it out for free right now. Grab your phone and text the emoji that best represents how you feel to 972-480-6715. See how your feelings compare with other listeners of the Feelings Matter podcast. Again, text the emoji to 972-480-6715. And now back to the conversation.
I appreciate this because I found John so much more relatable. Like I said, I have some similar issues. I have personally experienced that sense of not only that I'm in fight or flight, but I can't seem to get back out of it. That it just continues to compound day after day after day. And the reason why I'm involved with Mindful Appy and Feelings Matter and all of this is because being aware of it and paying attention to those first early signs that, that I can get myself back out of it. And like I said, bringing this back to this character, yes, he's a fictional character, but he's believable. He's human. He's relatable. And having that character in fiction that I can relate to and understand and go, oh yeah, I've been there, is really fascinating to me because I'm an avid reader. I love reading stuff. And I think the thing that I found the most annoying as I've gotten older, as I've matured in fiction, whether that's television, movies, books, whatever, is kind of the superhero syndrome that these people are a bit too good to be believed. I find I enjoy characters who are real, who are human, who struggle with the same things that I struggle with. I find those characters a lot more engaging. It taps into my empathy. And I think studies have shown that we actually learn how to be empathetic by walking a mile, even if it's a fictitious character, walking a mile in that character's shoes, we learn how to be more empathetic. And I just went completely off on a tangent. Other than just kind of working out your own personal demons, as you say, was there anything else driving you to write John the way that you did? I guess, was there an ulterior motive here anywhere, Alex?
It's so, I don't know why I just know I started working on this story, and I had all the materials that were given to me that I could create this thing. And I just thought, okay, I think it's clearly, looking back, I think clearly I was just trying to understand where I was. The year before I went to this job, I had several big things. I was a candidate for public office. I lost. I was supposed to win, and I lost. I had a cancer scare, had to have surgery to find out if I had cancer. I'd lost one of my best friends in the world unexpectedly. And I'd lost four things. And I'd lost my beloved grandfather all in that past year. And then I lost my job when I got done running for office. I came back to my job and the company was just starting to reorganize, and that's a whole other story. So I spent about 10 months unemployed. I was doing odd jobs, mowing lawns, whatever it took to make some money. I was literally about a week away from being evicted from my apartment. And this is a guy who just a year before was on the front page of the local newspaper saying, they're saying this candidate's going places. And, I probably was blackballed to a degree too, because of politics and things like that. It's where I ran, it was in Oklahoma, and let's just say I was on the wrong team for the majority in Oklahoma. But anyway, so I had everything kind of going against me. And I will tell you, my anxiety was at level, it was turned up to 11. I was nervous. I was embarrassed. I was furious at myself for putting myself, as I perceived, in this situation. Basically ruined a good thing in my career to go run for office because and believe it or not, one of the issues when I ran for office was mental health funding. Anyway, and that, by the way, right. And that, by the way, that was something I was scared to death of back then, though. This was 2000, turn of the century. I was terrified somebody was going to find out that I had some mental issues. They found out I'd been divorced, and that was a scandal in Oklahoma. But the fact that unfortunately, nobody ever went through my trash and found out, he's taking an antidepressant, because that could have been made into something, right? But so I get there, and I get there to that new job, and I'm anxious as hell. I'm going to a small town where I had very little experience with small towns. Even though I went to a small university, it was still bigger than this town. And when I wrote this story, I just kept hearing my fears. And my fears when I wrote this story, Michelle, here, let's see if you got this one. The fears I had when my inner Simon, my real me, I don't name my inner voice. It's just me. It's just a different form of me. I'm not that far different, but was saying, nobody's going to read this book and nobody's going to buy this book and you're an idiot, all of this stuff. And so I think I just started, yes, imposter syndrome deluxe, right? Started dumping. And my grandfather, who had passed away, he was a writer for 50 years. And he told me, you're a good writer. Just go. I just dumped all that in there. Then I'll tell you, when I finished it and got put out, then I was like, oh my God, people are going to read this and think and forgive the word, but this is just, they're going to think I'm crazy or something, or I'm kooky. And actually, no, though, I got a great response from people who said what you just did, basically, which is, at first they did. In the first book or two, they were like, what is this thing? Is it mental, or is it a ghost, or what? And then when it's kind of laid out for you as you go, you realize, yeah, it's his anxiety talking. And I've had people like yourself say, this meant a lot to me. I have this. And I like that this guy is not, like you said, he's not wearing a cape, he solves mysteries. He's not a detective. He just gets solved in these thriller situations. I like to think of my books as interesting people being thrown in mysterious situations. And I think that's, hopefully I know that was a long answer to your question. I hope that made sense.
It does make sense. And actually it relates to a question that we do have from Mike Schweiger. Is there a relationship between that anxiety and the fact that you write suspense? Now, I realize the first plot was kind of handed to you in that package, but you've continued to write suspense. All of your books are kind of in this line. Is that something that you're playing with? Was it intentional? Or?
Yeah, I that's a great point. Well, first of all, I want to say something that's a universal truth that most people won't admit to themselves, and that is that life is boring. Life is boring. It's very rare that any of us. And I've had a lot, just like all of you watching, Michelle, just like you, Tina, all of us have had true life, horrible situations that were edge of your seat. And think about it. It's not fun. I don't find, I've been nearly, killed a few times for various things in my life. I didn't find it fun or interesting or exhilarating to speak of at all. So I think, though, as a way for me to walk that tightrope of tension between how I deal with my anxiety and how I want to tell a good story, I am gravitating towards suspense, Tina. I think that's a great question. It's just, to me, it's like going to Disney World. I love the Haunted Mansion. My daughter's 12, doesn't think it's that scary anymore, but I psych myself up for the Haunted Mansion. I pretend like, these ghosts are real. I love it. Okay, maybe the Tower of Terror is a better example. I think we all want that. And I think we can find that in our entertainment. And that's beneficial because you can kind of go through those motions internally and have your thrills in entertainment and not have to, do a lot of thrill seeking in real life. Although, I do a few things. I used to do a lot more, but I do things in real life to try to feel things. Like I do races and obstacle course races and half marathons. And I do that because I think you're never more alive than when you're exerting yourself physically and emotionally. And I hope that is kind of what you're going to get when you read my books.
Excellent. She comes back with an interesting comment that suspense is almost like a safe form of anxiety. Honestly,
Yeah.
The more you talk, the more I'm thinking. You mentioned that Simon is kind of a character representation of our inner fears, right?
Yeah.
Reading suspense, watching a scary movie, those are ways for us to maybe engage our fight and flight and know that I'm going to come out of this, that I can kind of face that fear a bit and come out of it on the other side knowing I'm kind of okay. And yeah, I could see how it might be a way to work through some of like our minor levels of fear and and get to a point where we're not just like completely outrageously engaging that fight or flight mechanism, that we can walk up to the edge of it, look over the precipice, and then walk back and know it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I get so much enjoyment out of it, and I've heard from readers though who found a few, and this is really like a huge compliment. I had a reader who read one of the books. I won't say which, but there is a scene. I hate to spoil this because I know everybody listening is going to go buy all these books and read them right away. But in one of the books, Pilot actually disrupts a potential school shooting situation, and I wrote that after Sandy Hook, about a year after Sandy Hook or so, because I was so heartbroken, like everyone, about that. I think I subconsciously wanted to make a different thing happen. Right. But I had a reader get a hold of me and say she read that scene and she started crying. I asked why. She says, I don't know, just the idea that those kids, and that gun and those things. And I got to be honest with you, I felt complimented, but a little bad, because I thought, gosh, I don't want to make people cry in the sense that they're shook by it in that regard. And hopefully I didn't trigger her anxiety. I think any parent would be triggered by the thought of a school shooting, of course. So I don't know. It's a fine line.
Next time on Feelings Matter.
I would rather not write another word if I had to write something where mentally ill people were mocked or made to be the other, because most people who have mental illness and get help get better and go on to lead those very boring lives I was talking about earlier. Mm-hmm.
We're going to take a quick break for these messages. Stick around.
Do you have trouble talking about your feelings? You're not alone. It's a topic that can make even the most powerful people somewhat squeamish. You're listening to Feelings Matter, where our mission is to demystify everything about emotions so that we can all get more comfortable talking about them. Join Tina and Michelle every week as we unpack a new angle on emotions, drawing upon the science of the brain and the psychology of human nature.
Welcome to Feelings Matter, brought to you by Mindful Appy. I'm Michelle Stinson Ross. We do have a special guest, Mr. J. Alexander Greenwood. Your friend Jason McIntyre happened to show up with a question.
The author, Jason McIntyre.
Thank you, J. Mac, for showing up and joining us today. And I love this question. Do you think current events and media depictions contribute to mental health degradation en masse? And this also leads into kind of what I wanted to discuss as far as what's the importance of realistic representation of people with issues like PTSD, anxiety, depression, etc. So thank you, J-Mac, for asking this question.
Well, I think that we are also, unfortunately, for good and or ill, I think social media has a terrible effect on our society in so many ways. It's amplifying things, and then it's adding misinformation to the mix, and it's pumping us full of fear. I think the news media has some blame too, pumping a society full of fear. When you turn on your local news, and I don't expect it to be sunshine and rainbows, but police chase, murders, corruption, it's all the bad stuff. And if you just watch the news, and if you watch it all day long, imagine that, you just think everybody's bad. You think the whole society's going to hell. You think that they shouldn't walk outside and get shot. And sadly, in some places, you very well could. But I'm just saying, the news media and social media are doing two things. Social media is creating algorithms and has AI that is designed to keep you on social media because they make money off you, right? So they want to keep you on Facebook, right? If you haven't seen The Social Dilemma, I recommend it. I think it's on Netflix. They're trying to keep you there. The news, the TV news, and I love a lot of friends in the TV news. I was just on TV news yesterday talking about social media of all things, but they are naturally going to get the things that get ratings. And apparently, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because they get ratings talking about all that stuff. Or what about when I got bumped by local news a while back because they expected some heavy thunderstorms? Well, they didn't really materialize, but they bumped me just in case, because then we're going to do wall-to-wall coverage of it raining. So I'm a former journalist too. So I'm a critic of this stuff. So Jason, to answer your question, and Jason, who by the way is a highly talented, skilled writer of suspense, horror, thrillers, all this stuff. You know, sir, as well as I do about this from an artistic perspective. But just circling back around to what Michelle's saying. So let's take I just talked about kind of real life, what we got facing us, right? Which I agree, and which I think is pumping us full of bad stuff. Then we go to representations of the mentally ill in the media. Now, I can guarantee you there's going to be somebody who's an expert on mental illness who's going to read my book, hopefully, and maybe have an issue with it. My concern is, are they going to have an issue with it and say, okay, he is, making sport of it, or he is really dumbing down mental illness, or he is being so simplistic by creating like a doppelganger or an invisible friend. I don't know. I can only do as much as my talents let me, and this is just my contribution. But I will say this, that I would rather not write another word if I had to write something where mentally ill people were mocked or made to be the other, because most people who have mental illness and get help get better and go on to lead those very boring lives I was talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Jason's asking, do we have a responsibility to present those characters well? As storytellers, as fellow human beings, I certainly feel a lot more comfortable, a lot safer. We can get into that issue of psychological safety. I think characters like John Pilot and truly thoughtful, mindful characters that represent the reality of what it's like to suffer with something like this make it a lot easier for the stigma to be removed, and for those of us that do suffer to reach out and find that help. That no longer am I being judged because, oh my gosh, there are these great characters in books. I mean, it just kind of opens the door and makes it a lot easier to deal with this, because the judgmental aspect of it, the stigma attached to it, doesn't have as much power as it used to.
You're right. And you know what? That's why we need these representations. Can I just give you a real life representation? It just occurred to me while I was hearing what you're saying. Here in Missouri, where I live, we had a gentleman, Jason Kander. He used to be my state representative. Then he was our Secretary of State. He narrowly lost a U.S. Senate race a few years ago. He was all set to be, he was the lead to be the next mayor of Kansas City. And I think 3 or 4 months, maybe a little more out from the race. I mean, polling had him dead heat to win. Not dead heat, deadlocked to win. And one day he just announced, he's an Afghanistan veteran, I have post-traumatic stress disorder. It would be inappropriate for my family and for myself and for the citizens of this city for me to continue to seek this office while I'm having issues. I'm going to go get myself better, and then I'll be back. And that's what he did. So many people, though, me included, will swallow it, subsume it. Jason decided to go get help, and I know he'll be back, and I know he's a very talented politician, very talented statesman. We need people like that, and we need in our fiction, and to Jason's point, and Michelle, to your point, I think authors have a duty to not, look at, for fun, and this is not really the same thing exactly, but for fun, Google Hannibal Lecter representation of serial killer. Most serial killers are not brilliant. And by the way, I'm not equating mentally ill people with serial killers. I'm just trying to make a point about please, save your cards and letters and your emails. And most serial killers are not Hannibal Lecter anywhere near. Okay. So when you turn on the television in particular, and you see people who are mentally ill, I'm not going to even repeat a lot of the stereotypical stuff, but it makes me cringe, especially when I know for a fact that many of the doctors I've seen I suspect many, but I know a couple who have treated me for other things have had their own bouts with it, because everybody's human and everybody's honest with themselves. I'm not saying everybody's had mental illness, but everybody's had a mental issue of some sort if you're a functioning member of society. So it's just this idea that, you should be embarrassed or hide it. I think I often wonder if I'd gotten elected, would I have done that? Would I have stepped forward and said that? I don't know. I'd like to think I would have I got elected, but I was continuing to have problems, because I can imagine being elected and being in that pressure cooker, the Capitol, and then wanting to run for Congress, which is what I really wanted to do. My inner Simon would have found a way to either make me self-destruct in one way or another, or push me out there and say, go get some help and explain why. We have a duty to our readers and to our viewers, and to educate a little bit. Michelle, I think your point, it's good. And Jason, your point is good. We need to educate the public and our listenership. This is not a stigma. This is not a scarlet letter. If you have diabetes, you probably take insulin every day. If you have depression, you probably take an antidepressant. Why do we allow as a society this to be a stigma? We just shouldn't.
Support for this podcast comes from Mindful Appy. Your feelings matter, and Mindful Appy can prove it. Try it out for free right now. Grab your phone and text the emoji that best represents how you feel to 972-480-6715. See how your feelings compare with other listeners of the Feelings Matter podcast. Again, text the emoji to 972-480-6715. And now back to the conversation.
I have a tendency to agree with that. And I will point out, as Tina and I have talked through this, and just being aware of our emotional states and how it affects our job performance, our relationships, all of those sorts of things. Are we any less valuable as human beings just because we have some biochemical issues that kind of amp up our fight or flight response more than somebody else? No, it just means that we, again, have to be mindful and know that I'm feeling the signals of something not good is about to happen, and I need to just take a moment. It bears no reflection on how smart I am, how capable I am, how valuable I am to the rest of my work team, my society, my family. It just means that I'm getting signals from my body and everything else that say, okay, you're doing too much and you need to just stop for a moment. Just take a break.
Right. I totally agree. There are some things I do to stay. When I say stay level, by the way, again, I don't really have a depression diagnosis any longer. I just have anxiety issues, okay? But it can look like depression and can be depressing, but there's a difference between a depression diagnosis and being low, okay? And a lot of people don't understand that either. And that's something that, by the way, you see Pilot kind of walk through that. First they medicate him, then he gets in, and some of the best scenes I've ever written are between him and his therapist. So that's what I've done. I'm no longer even in therapy now. I'm in good shape. I did some cognitive behavioral therapy that has saved my life in so many ways. But I'm very much, not as much during COVID, but now that things are getting better, heavy into exercise. I do that. I seek stimulation through reading and through writing and doing those things. I just do those things, and I try to find joy in the moments that are boring. And sometimes it's weird. I think I weird out my family, because we'll be at the dinner table. No devices, just talking to each other, even if we're sick of talking to each other after a year, because, we've been going nowhere. And sometimes I just smile a little bit. I catch myself, and my daughter, who's 12 and very sharp, she's looked at me and said, what are you smiling at? I'm just like, I'm just enjoying this moment with my kid and my wife, and how great it is that we're together and we're okay. And she just like, okay, and he goes back to eating her dinner. But I think that is corny as that sounds to me, those are the things that help me get through this kind of stuff.
Well, not only are you helping yourself, but you're modeling the right types of coping for her.
Thank you. And this is something too that was hard for me. It's hard for men of a certain age showing our emotions to our children. She's seen me have tears at times. Not weird. They were appropriate tears to have, but a lot of men will not allow that. They will not let their kids see that they are a fully functioning human with emotions. I think it's helped my daughter already in so many wonderful ways. So I appreciate you saying that, Michelle, because we're talking about modeling appropriate mental health portrayals in media. We're talking about doing it in social media, but we should also go to where, as Voltaire said in Candide, we can all tend to our own garden. We can't save the world necessarily, but we can do that and model those behaviors for our children, our spouses, our neighbors. Thank you for identifying that. That's a great point.
Been a journey for me as well. So my kids are quite a bit older than yours. They're now all adults. And honestly, I've felt pangs of guilt that I wasn't aware enough. I wasn't educated well enough that I could have done a better job of modeling when my kids were your daughter's age. And luckily, my kids are also really smart.
Yeah.
They have found the resources that they needed when they needed them to get them through their own mental health crises and things like that. I value it so much because I feel like in some ways I missed some opportunities when my kids were younger.
But I hope you don't beat yourself up about it, because we all do the best we can in the positions we're in and the time we're in. And I think you're a remarkable person, and you've seen your kids through a lot of stuff. But I understand that too, that feeling. I don't know. I see that Jason had a little comment, another comment about Pilot. I just say that, that he works on himself. That he's always trying to but he is not like Superman either. Like book 7, he's a mess. This is what I think is kind of interesting. He's managing his anxiety a lot better to a degree, but he's still turning to substances like alcohol to get him through. He's still struggling with, I think he's very needy, and he likes the attention of women. So he's always kind of available, even though he's married. And that gets him in trouble. And he can often not intentionally kind of close himself off to his spouse, and that causes trouble. And then he gets involved in these situations, these violent situations, which makes him spike a little bit. So I don't want to give people the impression, though, that though I am careful to portray this realistically, I don't want to give people the impression that he's boring, because it's not. Mm-hmm. There's always something happening. We're all complex. There are some days when, you're just an absolute, what to people, and you don't even know why. You just are. It's because your body chemistry. It's because your mood, whatever it might be. But ultimately, I think we're all working on ourselves, and or should be. And I think that's what I strive to do with my characters and with myself.
Excellent. I'm going to point out one thing before we go.
Okay.
Like I said, I have read all of the books that have been published so far. And one of the things I noticed, and you can call me out if it's absolute crap, but as John has worked on himself, he has turned inward a bit. It's like he's so focused on working on himself that he misses the boat on the empathy thing. Yeah. That he misses signals from people around him that get him into trouble because he's really not empathetic and paying attention. Did I read that right?
I think he did. And that is something with me. I'm actually a very empathetic person, but sometimes I find myself turning it down. Like if I could turn down the volume on my own empathy, because as well off as I am, better than I've ever been in my life, I still sometimes think that my empathy is misunderstood. I think that I'm the type of person that if we're sitting there having a cup of coffee together, if the conversation's going pretty well, I'm pretty good at creating an intimacy. And I don't mean it in a sexual way or a flirty way, but I'm good at creating an intimacy. And I've actually had people tell me stuff like an hour after they met me or something that were pretty deep. And I realized that I have that ability to get people to open up a little bit, and that's great. But then I've had some people do that, and then they're embarrassed. And so I'm always like, oh, well, maybe I should just be a little more backing off a little bit. But also, too, I think just the other side of that is I'm also really sick and tired of myself. And I think John Pilot is sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I think he's also selfish. He's got these wonderful people around him, but he gets, like you said, Michelle, he gets very tunnel vision at times. And he's just focused on, well, I'm going to get what I want to get, and I've earned it because this, and this. which is not an attractive trait, but it's human. So you're the first person to really identify that. Thank you very much. That's really good. Yes. He's definitely got some issues there. But again, if he were perfect, he would be boring. So there you go.
Excellent. So as we wrap this up, we've talked so much about the adventures of John Pilot and who he is. Yeah. So how can people get the books?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, what you do is you go and you buy all. No, I'm just kidding. You don't buy all of them, but no.
No. I throw this off. We so to call out Jason McIntyre, who's been participating via chat in this conversation, is the cover artist for several of these books.
Yes.
As well, right?
Yes. Look at this. Look at the Pilot's Key. Is that not gorgeous? Look at that.
Love
my Lord. I love that one. My other one.
So bad now.
I do too. And he did. This is the 10th anniversary of the series special edition he did. And this takes place in Jamaica and Key West and all that. Anyway, if you want to buy them, they're available on Kindle and paperback. Right now, they're exclusive to Amazon. Don't boo me, don't hiss. We're working on distribution to some independent bookstores again. We used to do that. We just got a position where they just weren't selling in independent bookstores. They were selling almost exclusively on Amazon. So we're trying to take advantage of a lot of the promotional stuff you get if you're exclusive to Amazon. And it's kind of working. So don't hate me, independent bookstores. But go to Amazon.com. It's the John Pilot. It's spelled like Pilates, but it's not. It's Pilate, like the Roman governor who unfortunately washed his hands of Jesus. And by the way, that's a thing. A lot of people just don't get. I'm surprised that more people don't get that. I have people all the time. That Pilates stuff, that's great. Pilates cross, Pilates key. I'm like, no, John Pilate, like the Roman governor. Washed his hands of... Sunday school needs to do a better job. That's all I got to say. But no, but that's where you can get them. And do look for my buddy Jason McIntyre's work too. I am the Salieri to his Mozart. He writes really incredible stuff. I think you should check it out.
All right. So obviously there are books, but I would be remiss if I did not mention that you also have a couple of podcasts. So if you've enjoyed listening to Alex talk about his book and creativity, there's also Mysterious Goings On.
Yeah, just real quick, it's a podcast about creativity and books. I interview authors, and here's the good news. Unlike today, I don't just talk constantly. I do what Michelle does. I ask the questions. I think you're going to love it if you're into reading, if you're into creativity. And then the other one is more business related called PR After Hours. And it's twice a week. And it's about public relations, marketing, business, productivity. I interview folks and I also give helpful tips.
Excellent. Mr. J. Alexander Greenwood, I really appreciate you spending some time with us and opening up and being vulnerable about mental health issues, about anxiety and depression, and how we can better represent real human beings in art and culture and media. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I am honored to be asked, and I hope at the very least I shed some light, but I do encourage people to talk to NAMI and some of these other great groups out there that I don't know. You can name more than I can, Michelle, but there's so many great groups you can go to for more information about mental illness. Just remember, it's mental illness is not a death sentence. It's just part of life, and it can be taken care of if you get the kind of help you need.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for listening to Mysterious Goings On. Don't forget we have a complete archive of all of our interviews, monologues, updates, live readings, dead readings. All of that stuff is available at mgopod.com. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to us so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the usual suspects. Please join us there. Again, don't forget, mgopod.com also has links where to find me on social media and how to get in touch in case you want to be a guest here on the show. Well, I think it's time that I move on for this week, but until next time, keep reading.